Something changed this week. You can feel it if you step outside. The air coming down from the north has a different edge to it. It's not cold, not yet, but there's a crispness in it that wasn't there 10 days ago, and the models have picked up on the same thing. They are showing a fall pattern taking hold across the United States right now, in the final week of August, when we normally would not be talking about this for at least another 3 or 4 weeks. That's the story today. An early flip. And buried at the far end of one of these model runs, there's something even more interesting. A patch of blue, snow, on a map in early September, after one of the hottest summers a lot of us can remember. Let me walk you through all of it, day by day, so you know exactly what's coming and when. Today is Saturday, the 22nd of August. And honestly, across a big chunk of the East, this has been one of those days you wish you could bottle. Comfortable air, a breeze with some bite to it, the kind of weather where you actually want to be outside doing yard work instead of hiding from the heat. That's a big shift from where we were just a couple of weeks ago. Right now, there's a massive ridge sitting out west. A ridge is just a big northward bulge in the jet stream, and it usually brings high pressure with it, which usually means dry, settled, warm conditions, usually. But here's the odd part. Even with that ridge in place, there's still rain and storm activity showing up across the Rockies and the Four Corners states. High pressure is there, and moisture is still finding a way in anyway. That's a little unusual, and it's worth noting because it tells you the atmosphere out west isn't as locked down as the map would suggest. Move east from that ridge, and the jet stream dives south. That's a trough. And where you get a trough, you get cooler air pulling down from Canada, and you get instability. The flow across the east right now is coming out of the north and heading south, which is exactly why it feels the way it feels out there. That northern flow has been busy. We've had days of scattered thunderstorms and showers rolling through, a lot of lightning, and even a few tornadoes touching down in parts of the mid-Atlantic. That's not a normal late August setup for that part of the country. It's been genuinely active, and we expect more of it in the short term. Now watch what happens as we go into Sunday, the 23rd. The trough sharpens up and centers itself right over the Ohio Valley, the mid-Atlantic and the northeast. Cooler than normal air stays locked in across the eastern third of the country. And here's something worth paying close attention to. The overall shape of the flow, the way that trough digs down the east coast and then curls back up, is nor'easter flow. That's the exact pattern that spins up those big coastal storms in fall and winter. We're not getting a nor'easter this weekend. Let me be clear about that. There's no major coastal storm about to spin up, but you can see the machinery lining up. There is low pressure trying to organize offshore, with showers and thunderstorms wrapped into it. The problem for that system, if you want to call it a problem, is that it's just too far out over the water. As Sunday goes on, it gets shoved further and further east, out to sea, away from land. That's just this one. History tells us the first real nor'easter is coming, and it tells us there will be a lot of them this season. This pattern, ridge in the west, trough in the east, is the one that builds them. We're just waiting for the first one to grab the coast instead of sliding out to sea. There's one more feature on Sunday worth mentioning. Inside that western ridge, there's a small pocket of low pressure sitting in the middle of the trough further north. That's a very ordinary thing to see in late summer and early fall, and what it produces is that gray, showery, dreary kind of day. Not dramatic, just damp and dull. The plains, the Rockies, and the Pacific Northwest all have activity showing up within that western setup too, which again is not what you'd expect under a big ridge. Monday, the 24th. The jet stream flattens out. When the jet flattens, everything calms down a notch. You lose the sharp north-south digging, you lose some of the energy, and you generally lose some of the storm production with it. So Monday is a step down from the weekend in terms of intensity. It's still cooler than normal across the east, and there's still shower and thunderstorm activity hanging around the northeast. And there's still a bit of a ridge out west, but the whole thing is a lot less aggressive. Tuesday, the 25th, keeps that flatter look going. Same story. The jet is stretched out, not diving hard, and the pattern is far less intense than what we're dealing with this weekend. But don't write Tuesday off completely, because there's a mechanism there that can still produce storms. Where that flatter jet stream dips down, it drags cooler and drier air with it, and that cooler, just drier air is going to run straight into places that are still sitting in warm, humid air. When those two air masses collide, you get instability, and instability is the fuel for thunderstorms. So even in a calm-looking pattern, that boundary can light up. There are also still a few storm systems tracking across the northern tier on Tuesday, bringing showers and possibly thunderstorms with them. That northern storm track has honestly been the main event for most of this summer, so it's just carrying on doing what it's been doing. Wednesday, the 26th, is where it gets interesting again. The western ridge tries to rebuild. It starts pumping back up, bringing warmer temperatures and higher pressure back to the western states by the middle of next week. And here's the thing about that western ridge. When it goes up, something has to come down somewhere else. The atmosphere balances itself out. So as that ridge builds in the west, it helps force a descending pattern into the east, which means the cooler air makes a comeback for the second half of next week. There's also low pressure showing up south of Hudson Bay on Wednesday, and it looks like it's dragging a cold front behind it. That's another push of cooler air heading toward the eastern states. Storm-wise, Wednesday is busy. Showers and thunderstorms all the way up the eastern states, plus more showers and storms across the Midwest and the Great Lakes. Thursday, the 27th, is when the pattern locks in properly. The models don't fully agree on how strong this gets. Some are more aggressive than others, but they do agree on the shape. Ridge in the west, trough in the east. That's the signature setup we've been talking about, and by Thursday, it's the dominant pattern across North America. Underneath it, there's low pressure, a lot of instability, and thunderstorms making a real return across the eastern United States. And it doesn't stop at the border. Parts of southern Canada get in on it too. Toronto and the whole corridor running down through the Great Lakes are looking at showers and thunderstorms as well. That's a lot of activity for eastern North America late next week, and that's the current consensus across the model guidance. Friday, the 28th, the low pressure that's been driving things pulls up and out of the picture, and then something a little surprising happens. Cooler, stormier conditions come racing back into the west, but very quickly. More precipitation shows up out there, and the ridge that just rebuilt starts flattening back down again. As that western ridge flattens, the eastern trough gets knocked down too. It's the same balancing act working in reverse. So by Friday, everything looks flatter. There's still a descending flow into the east, so there will probably still be cooler than normal conditions in spots. But it's not an overwhelming trough anymore. It's not a dramatic cool down, just a mild lean toward the cool side. What doesn't quiet down is the Gulf Coast and the East Coast. Those two regions keep pumping out showers and thunderstorms right through this whole period. And I want you to remember this, because it's not a one-week thing. That stretch, the Gulf Coast running around into the East Coast, is the stormiest region in the country over the next several weeks. And when you look at the history of patterns like this one, that region stays active into fall, through winter, and quite possibly all the way into next spring. Spring of 2027, that's a small preview of what the next several months are shaping up to look like. There's another detail on Friday worth flagging. The jet stream starts pushing through the Pacific Northwest and into the northern Rockies. That's bringing precipitation into those areas as the western ridge breaks apart. Keep that in your head, because it becomes important later in this video. Saturday, the 29th, a week from today, we go back to a flat jet stream. And you know what that means by now. Less energy, less turbulence, less instability, and therefore less storm activity overall. There are still some isolated showers and thunderstorms up the eastern states, and a pocket of activity for the plains and the Midwest. But it's a quieter day compared to what came before it. Sunday, the 30th, keeps that flat, wavy look. Activity runs along the jet across the Midwest, the plains, and the Great Lakes, and the East Coast keeps going, with the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic in particular staying wet. Monday, the 31st of August, the last day of the month. The western ridge builds again, and if you've been following along, you already know what that means. There's a rhythm to this whole stretch. The ridge goes up, then flattens, then goes up again, and the east responds every single time. It's a back and forth that just keeps repeating. So as the ridge builds on Monday, low pressure descends into the east right on cue, and cooler conditions come with it. There's a lot of activity across the deep south and up the east coast. There's lower pressure over the Great Lakes and Midwest with a good share of rain there too. Put it all together, and you get an active, dreary, cooler end to summer and start to the fall of 2026. Tuesday, the 1st of September, looks almost identical. Cooler in the east, a bit stormy, ridge in the west, and then, from that point forward, the models basically hold this pattern in place all the way through Sunday, the 6th of September. Ridge in the west, trough in the east, over and over. The trough doesn't quite reach down to the Gulf Coast, so the far southern states hang on to some warmth. But for the majority of the eastern states, we're talking about temperatures that run significantly below normal at times, and a storm count that's well above what's typical for early September. Now let me switch models on you, because you should never trust just one. Everything I've walked you through so far leans on one set of guidance. So let's check it against the GFS, which is the American model, and see whether the two agree or fight each other. For the next few days, they agree. Cooler air, stormy conditions for the East Coast today and into tomorrow. No argument. Then the GFS says that storminess wraps up for Monday and Tuesday. A little less cool, a little less stormy for those 2 days. That lines up nicely with the flattening jet we talked about. Then, late next week, the GFS agrees again. It moves into the same ridge in the west, trough in the east pattern, and it brings the storms roaring back for the Gulf and the East Coast. So through next week, the two models are telling a very similar story. That's good. When independent models converge like that, your confidence goes up. Push into the week after, and the agreement mostly holds. The GFS keeps the ridge in the west and the trough in the east with low pressure systems, and storms rolling through the east coast at intervals. Similar picture, similar timing. But at the very tail end of the run, something flips. And I want to be careful here, because this is the part where you have to lower your confidence. We're talking about hour 384 of the model run. That's 14, 15, 16 days out. Not 6 or 7, 16. Model skill drops off a cliff at that range. Details at that distance almost always change, but it's fun to look at. So here's what it shows. Around the 6th and 7th of September, the GFS does a complete reversal. Warmer conditions return to the east. Cooler air slides into the west, the exact opposite of everything we've been describing. And the west gets cool enough that snow starts showing up on the map. Not much of it, just a light patch. But there it is, over the Cascades and the Northern Rockies for September 7th. Now, is that going to verify exactly like that? Almost certainly not. It's an extremely specific detail sitting right at the edge of the model's range, and specific details that far out are very likely to change. But that's not really the point. The point is what it represents. After a summer that was brutally hot for so much of this country, we're finally seeing the first blue appear on the maps. Fall is coming, winter is behind it, and the models are starting to sniff it out. Let's look at rainfall totals now, because this is where the pattern shows its real personality. Across the west, things look fairly quiet. There's some moisture for the Northwest and the Rockies, but a lot less than what those areas have been getting recently. It's a calmer picture out there. Head east, and it's a completely different world. The plains and the Midwest pick up a good amount of rain. The Great Lakes get their share. But the dominant feature, the thing that jumps off the map, is the storm track running along the Gulf Coast and up the East Coast. That corridor is very active, and precipitation totals there come in far above average for most areas. If you live anywhere in that stretch, from the Gulf states up through the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic, this is your headline. Rain, and a lot of it, again and again over the next couple of weeks. Checking the GFS on rainfall as well, it tells the same story. There's some activity out west, but nothing overwhelming. The plains and Midwest are active, the Great Lakes are active, and the Gulf and East Coast light up. Two different models, same answer. Now, temperatures on the European model. Cooler for the next few days across the east. Then a modest warm-up around the middle of next week. Then another trough moves in. Not the most intense trough we've ever seen, but there's enough blue on the map to notice. Then, heading into early September, temperatures settle into a consistent near normal to below normal pattern across the east, while all the warmth piles up out west. So it's cooler, but not extreme. Nothing brutal. Just a persistent, noticeable lean below where we should be for this time of year. The furthest below normal areas, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Midwest, those regions take the biggest hit, and they take it over the next few days. The GFS shows similar things on temperatures. The warmth is trying to hold its ground in the deep south and putting up a real fight down there. But everywhere else in the east, this model shows major cool downs sliding in for the beginning of September. That's an unusual thing to be discussing in August, and it's the reason this pattern is worth talking about at all. Let's finish up with the Storm Prediction Center outlooks, because that's the part that actually affects your day today and tomorrow. Day 1, today, Saturday the 22nd. There's an enormous amount of light green on this map. Light green is the general thunderstorm area. That's where ordinary thunderstorms are expected, not severe ones, and it covers the entire eastern seaboard, a huge amount of inland territory, and a big portion of the west as well. There is more of this country under a general thunderstorm risk today than not under one. That's a lot of ground. I want to say something important about that light green, because people brush it off. General thunderstorm does not mean harmless. Ordinary storms still produce lightning that kills. They still produce downpours that flood roads. They still knock trees onto power lines. And every so often, a storm in a general risk area goes further than anyone expected and turns severe. The unexpected happens. So pay attention, even if you're only sitting under the light green. Stepping up a level, there are 3 darker green areas today. That's the level 1 marginal risk, where isolated severe weather is possible. One runs along the Rockies and up into the northwest. One sits over the deep south, and one covers the Ohio Valley. If you connect those on a map, it almost looks like a horseshoe across the country. Then there are 2 yellow zones. That's level 2, the slight risk, where severe weather becomes more scattered rather than isolated, and where reports actually start rolling in. One yellow zone covers the deep south, the other covers the Ohio Valley. Day 2, Sunday the 23rd, looks similar. General thunderstorms over a wide area, marginal risk zones, and a slight risk that includes the Rockies this time, which is an interesting detail on its own. The eastern seaboard has another very active day. Day 3, Monday the 24th, is when things finally start settling down for parts of the mid-Atlantic. But the northeast still has threats to deal with. The southeast stays in play. And the central part of the country, running into the Rockies, still has thunderstorms and a bit of severe weather to watch. Beyond that, days 4 through 8, there are no outlooks issued at all right now, nothing flagged that far ahead. So let me pull all of this together for you. We are watching fall arrive early, not by a few days, by weeks. The pattern that normally shows up in the back half of September is establishing itself right now, at the end of August. The engine driving it is a ridge in the west and a trough in the east. That combination sends cool Canadian air spilling down into the eastern half of the country, and it sets up a storm track that runs along the Gulf and straight up the east coast. For the next week and a half, the east is going to feel cooler than it should, below normal temperatures at times, with the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Midwest getting hit hardest. The Deep South holds on to some warmth and fights back, but even there the storms keep coming. Rainfall runs far above average across the Gulf and East Coast. If you're in that corridor, plan around it. It's not a single storm system, it's a repeating conveyor belt of them. Nor'easter season is knocking. Not this weekend, but the flow is already showing the right shape, and this kind of pattern historically produces a lot of them. The first one is a matter of when, not if. And the West stays in a back and forth. Ridge up, ridge down, ridge up again. Each swing sends a corresponding response into the east. Then there's that far-off model run showing the first snow of the season over the Cascades and the Northern Rockies in early September. Low confidence, probably won't verify as shown. But it's the first blue we've seen on these maps in months, and it's a signal of where all of this is heading. Because that's the bigger picture here. The Gulf and East Coast storm track we're watching right now is not a 2-week visitor. Patterns like this tend to stay locked in, and this one looks like it wants to run through fall, through winter, and potentially all the way into the spring of 2027. So enjoy this cool air while it's here. Get outside, open the windows, because what's arriving behind it is a long, active, stormy stretch, and it's starting a whole lot earlier than anyone expected. Thanks for watching. If this helped you, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next update. We're tracking this pattern every single day.